The morning light spills through the curtains. Helen sits by the window, her cup of tea warm in her hands. She watches the leaves dance outside, slow and gentle. Her shoulders ache again, the same dull pain that visits every morning. She remembers when lifting a flower pot was easy. Now, even reaching for a cup feels heavy. The years have whispered stiffness into her body. But today feels different. She doesn't want to fight the pain anymore. She wants to move with it, breathe through it. Her therapist once said, "Slow movement is powerful." Helen smiles at that memory. She places her cup down and rolls her shoulders, just a little. A soft pop, then warmth spreads along her neck. It's not much, but it's a start. Outside, the sun brightens. The world seems to stretch with her. She inhales deeply, feeling the rhythm of her breath. Each slow motion feels like a quiet promise. Maybe healing isn't loud. Maybe it's simply learning to move slowly again. Helen walks through her garden, her steps soft on the damp soil. The air smells of jasmine and wet grass. She loves mornings like this, when the world feels half awake. Her fingers brush the petals of a pink rose. She used to trim these plants with ease. Now, lifting her arms feels like moving through water. The stiffness has crept in slowly, like a quiet guest who never leaves. At first, she ignored it. Just age, she told herself. Everyone slows down eventually. But as months passed, her shoulders grew heavy, locked in tension. She couldn't zip her dress without pain. She couldn't wave to her neighbor without wincing. It wasn't just her body that ached. It was her spirit, too. The things she loved, gardening, painting, hanging laundry in the sun, all started to feel like chores instead of joys. One afternoon, her daughter visited. She noticed Helen struggling to lift a watering can. "Mom," she said softly, "you don't have to live like this." Helen laughed it off at first. She didn't want pity. But that night, her shoulder throbbed so much she couldn't sleep. She lay in the dark, her hand on her arm, breathing through the ache. She remembered something her late husband once told her. Every small thing you do with love, your body remembers. So she decided to begin small again. The next morning, she searched online for gentle shoulder stretches. She found videos for seniors, voices kind and patient. "Move slowly," one instructor said. "Let your breath guide you." That sentence stayed with her. Helen started with 5 minutes a day. She moved in front of her mirror, rolling her shoulders carefully. At first, she could barely lift her arms halfway. Her movements were shaky, uneven. But she didn't stop. She breathed with each stretch. Inhale up. Exhale down. Day by day, something shifted. The pain softened. Her confidence grew. She began to understand that her body wasn't broken. It was waiting for attention. The garden mirrored her progress. New buds opened after the rain, slow and steady. Helen smiled as she reached for a branch one morning. Her shoulders still ached, but less. The stiffness didn't own her anymore. Each movement felt like a quiet conversation with her body. She whispered through every stretch, "It's okay, we're learning again." Her world began to open with every gentle roll and lift. She realized strength didn't always roar. Sometimes it came in silence, in patience, the kind that grows roots deep beneath the soil. Helen no longer feared the morning ache. It became her reminder to move, to breathe, to listen. And as the sun touched her shoulders, she felt something new. Not just relief, but renewal. A quiet strength blooming slowly, just like her garden. The next week, Helen visited her physical therapist, Dr. Lewis. His office was quiet, filled with soft light and the scent of eucalyptus. He greeted her with a calm smile. "So how are your shoulders today?" he asked. Helen lifted her arm slowly, stopping halfway. "They still feel tight," she said, "but not as bad as before." Dr. Lewis nodded. "That's good," he said gently. "You're waking them up." Helen frowned. "Waking them up?" she asked. He chuckled softly. "Yes, the shoulder joint sleeps when we stop using it fully. It loves movement." He picked up a small model of the shoulder from his desk. "This little joint," he said, turning it in his hands, "is a masterpiece. It's made of bones, muscles, tendons, all working together. It can move in more directions than almost any other joint in the body. But that flexibility is also its weakness. If one muscle tightens, the others have to work harder. And over time, that causes pain." Helen listened carefully. She never thought of her body as a team before. Each part helping the other, each movement depending on balance. Dr. Lewis continued, "When we age, our bodies don't lose the ability to move. They just forget how. Our job is to remind them slowly, kindly." Helen nodded. That word again, slowly. She felt its weight, its truth. He asked her to stand up. "Let's see how your shoulders behave today," he said. She stood, her feet steady, her spine tall. "Good posture," he encouraged. "Now lift your shoulders toward your ears." She inhaled deeply, following his rhythm. "Hold it," he said softly. "Now release." She exhaled, feeling the tension melt down her back. He guided her through slow circles, one shoulder at a time. Each motion felt like tracing memories in her muscles. There was no rush. No pushing past pain. Only awareness, breath, and patience. After a few minutes, her body felt lighter. Dr. Lewis smiled. "See, you're teaching your joints to trust you again." Helen smiled back, surprised by the warmth spreading through her arms. Trust. She hadn't thought of it that way. For years, she treated her pain as an enemy. But maybe it was just her body asking for attention. Dr. Lewis handed her a small notepad. "Write down what your shoulders feel after every stretch," he said. "It helps you connect." That night, Helen sat at her table and wrote. "They feel tired but alive." She paused, reading her own words. Alive. The next morning, she moved with purpose. Each circle, each lift carried a message of care. Her shoulders responded, slow but sure. She realized the science Dr. Lewis shared wasn't just anatomy. It was a story of harmony, of remembering what it means to move with grace. And for the first time in a long while, she felt proud of her own strength. Not because she was fast, but because she was finally listening. That evening, Helen decided to create her own quiet space for movement. She cleared a small corner in her living room. A soft mat, a chair for balance, and a warm light from her old lamp. The house was silent except for the ticking clock. She stood there for a moment, unsure. The stillness felt heavy, almost sacred. Her shoulders tingled with a dull ache, but she wasn't afraid of it anymore. She remembered Dr. Lewis's words. Kindness first always. So she began by closing her eyes. Her breath came slow, deep, steady. Inhale through the nose. Exhale through the mouth. Each breath softened the space around her heart. She imagined her shoulders melting into warmth. Not forced, just allowed. She whispered to herself, "I am safe to move." The words echoed gently in her mind. Her arms felt lighter, her spine taller. The room seemed to breathe with her. She started with small circles of her wrists. Then her elbows, one at a time. Her body moved like a slow wave returning to the shore. There was no rush, no expectation. Only rhythm and breath. When she lifted her shoulders toward her ears, she noticed something new. The movement felt smoother, less stiff. Her joints didn't resist as much as they used to. She smiled, a small victory. Her cat, Luna, jumped onto the chair and watched quietly. Helen laughed softly. "It's just you and me tonight," she said. The laughter loosened something inside her. Her chest opened, her body relaxed. She felt her breath travel down her arms, reaching her fingertips. Every inhale felt like sunlight pouring into her bones. Every exhale carried away the heaviness of the day. She realized this wasn't just stretching. It was an act of care. A moment to listen, not control. She raised her hands slightly higher, fingers open wide. Her shoulders trembled but held steady. She breathed through the tremor. It was the sound of strength returning. She thought about how often she'd rushed through life. Tasks, routines, days blending together. Now everything felt slower, more alive. The tick of the clock was no longer pressure. It was rhythm. Her body, her breath, and time, all moving together. When she lowered her arms, she felt warmth spreading through her upper back. A kind of gentle power she hadn't known in years. She pressed her palms together at her chest. Her heart beat strong, steady. She whispered again, "I am healing." The lamp flickered softly, casting golden light on her face. Outside, the night deepened. Helen felt calm, grounded, awake. Her shoulders no longer felt like burdens. They were wings, unfolding slowly, patiently. She knew this was just the beginning. Tomorrow she would stretch again. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Because this was how healing began, one breath, one slow movement at a time. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the curtains like liquid gold. Helen woke up feeling rested, her shoulders soft instead of sore. She stretched her arms above her head, slow and mindful. The stiffness was still there, but quieter, almost gentle. Today, she wanted to go deeper into her slow shoulder stretch. She rolled out her mat and stood tall, feet grounded. Her breath filled the room, calm and steady. She closed her eyes and began with her favorite move. Shoulders up to her ears, inhale. Shoulders down, exhale. She could almost hear the sound of release in her body. Each motion was like brushing dust off forgotten parts of herself. She smiled softly and moved into slow shoulder rolls. Forward first, then back. The circles were small, smooth, and full of intention. She pictured her joints gliding like old hinges. The warmth in her muscles began to spread. It wasn't pain anymore, it was awakening. Helen reached her arms out to the sides, palms open. Her fingers trembled slightly, but she kept breathing. "Slow," she whispered, "just slow." She inhaled and lifted her hands until they met above her head. Her shoulders stretched, pulling gently like a morning yawn. She felt alive, awake in every corner of her body. When she lowered her arms, she noticed her heart beating faster. Not from strain, but from energy returning. She moved into a light twist, turning her upper body left, then right. Her shoulders followed naturally, no resistance. It felt like a dance, one her body remembered after years of silence. Her movements became smoother, softer. She began to match each breath with intention. Inhale for strength. Exhale for peace. The rhythm carried her forward, like waves meeting the shore. Her cat stretched beside her, tail high, mimicking her motions. Helen laughed, the sound bright and free. "Good job, Luna," she said playfully. She lifted her arms again, slower this time, eyes closed. This was no longer just exercise. It was meditation in motion. Her breath became her guide, her anchor. The world outside disappeared, only presence remained. Each stretch spoke a silent language of healing. The ache she once feared had turned into a teacher. She realized she didn't need to chase big progress. Every gentle lift was a victory. Every breath was proof of resilience. When she finally paused, she placed her hands on her heart. Her shoulders relaxed completely, sinking into peace. She whispered, "Thank you," not sure to whom, her body, her breath, or both. In that moment, she understood the truth of movement. Healing doesn't come through force. It comes through kindness, patience, and trust. The golden light danced across her face. She felt warmth, strength, and quiet joy. And deep inside, she knew she was no longer broken. She was rebuilding, breath by breath. That afternoon, Helen sat by the window again, her garden glowing in the sun. She could see the roses swaying softly, as if breathing with her. It had been weeks since she started her slow shoulder practice. The pain that once ruled her mornings had turned into something else. Not gone, but gentler, like a reminder of how far she had come. She wrapped her hands around her teacup and smiled. Her body felt lighter, her spirit calmer. Movement had become her quiet ritual, her daily prayer. Each stretch whispered, "You're still strong." Sometimes she thought about how she used to rush everything. Work, chores, even rest. Now she understood the beauty of slow. Slowness had taught her to listen, to notice the warmth of sunlight on her shoulders, to feel gratitude for every breath that carried her through pain. She remembered the first day she tried to stretch, how heavy her arms felt, how fear tightened her chest. But she didn't give up. The change didn't come in a day or a week. It came in tiny moments, one circle, one breath, one smile. Her daughter visited that weekend and noticed it too. "Mom, you look different," she said softly. Helen laughed, touching her shoulder gently. "Maybe I'm just learning to move again," she replied. They sat together in the garden, silence full of peace. Her daughter took a deep breath and smiled. "I think you're glowing," she said. Helen looked down at her hands, a bit shy. It wasn't glow, she thought, it was balance. Inside her, something had shifted. The pain no longer defined her days. It had become part of her story, not her shadow. She began to notice other changes too. Her posture had improved. Her sleep had deepened. Even her laughter came easier. The world seemed brighter, kinder. Each morning stretch now felt like writing a love letter to her body. No judgment, no rush. Just care. She started to keep a small journal beside her mat. Each entry was short but meaningful. Less pain today. Shoulders warm and open. Grateful for movement. Reading them back, she could see her own journey unfold. Not as a miracle, but as devotion. She had learned to trust her body again. And that trust became her new strength. When she lifted her arms now, she felt more than motion. She felt memory. The memory of struggle, of patience, of returning to herself. She looked out at the roses swaying under the wind. They bent but never broke. Just like her. The stretch had taught her more than anatomy. It had taught her grace. She whispered softly, "I'm not just healing, I'm blooming." The wind carried her words through the garden. The sunlight rested on her shoulders. And for the first time in years, Helen felt completely, quietly whole. The days turned into months, and Helen's routine became second nature. Every morning began with quiet music and soft light from her window. She would stand tall, feet grounded, palms open to the day. Her breath guided her, steady and patient. Each slow shoulder stretch had become a friend, not a task. She no longer counted the minutes or the movements. She just moved because it felt right. Her body no longer resisted the flow. The pain that once kept her awake at night had faded into memory. Sometimes she could still feel a twinge, a whisper of the past. But instead of fear, she met it with compassion. She had learned that healing was not the absence of pain. It was the ability to move through it with grace. One morning, her neighbor, Mrs. Carter, stopped by the gate. Helen was hanging laundry in the sun, arms lifting easily. "You seem so full of energy these days," Mrs. Carter said. Helen smiled, her eyes warm with understanding. "I just learned to move slowly," she replied. Mrs. Carter laughed softly. "Slowly, I could use some of that wisdom." Helen invited her for tea, and soon they talked about small steps, about breathing, about letting the body unfold without pressure. That afternoon, they stretched together in the garden. Two women, two stories, one rhythm of breath. The roses swayed above them as if cheering them on. Helen realized she wasn't just healing herself anymore. She was sharing the peace she had found. Every gentle roll of her shoulders carried quiet strength. Every exhale released the weight of the years. Her body had become her teacher. It taught her the power of patience, the importance of consistency, the gift of awareness. She remembered how Dr. Lewis once said, "Movement is memory." And now she understood. Each stretch carried traces of her past, the struggles, the victories. Every day she honored them with motion. She even wrote small notes to herself on sticky papers. "Breathe. Be gentle. Strong doesn't mean fast." She placed them on the mirror, reminders of her journey. Some mornings she danced instead of stretched. Slow, graceful movements, her shoulders rolling like waves. Her laughter filled the house. She felt young again, not in years but in spirit. The mirror no longer showed a woman defined by age. It reflected strength, softness, and quiet confidence. As she finished her practice one morning, she stood still. Hands on her heart, eyes closed. The garden shimmered in the distance. She whispered, "Thank you, body, for staying with me." It wasn't a prayer, it was gratitude. Every small habit, every slow movement had brought her here. She was not chasing perfection. She was living connection. And in that moment, as the sunlight touched her face, Helen knew she had found what she'd been seeking all along. Not just ease in her shoulders, but peace in her soul. The evening sky glowed soft orange as Helen stood by her garden gate. The air was calm, carrying the scent of blooming roses. She lifted her shoulders once more, slow and gentle. The movement felt natural now, like breathing. Her body no longer resisted, it flowed. She smiled, remembering the early days of pain and hesitation. How heavy those mornings once felt. Now they were memories of growth. Each stretch, each breath had brought her closer to herself. She touched her shoulder lightly, feeling warmth beneath her skin. This was not the end of her journey. It was a beginning made of patience and care. She turned toward the setting sun, eyes soft with peace. The world seemed slower, kinder, more alive. Helen whispered quietly, "Thank you for staying." She meant her body, her breath, her courage. Inside her chest, calm and strength moved as one. The light dimmed, but her heart felt bright. She walked back inside, the rhythm of her steps easy and sure. The day was ending, but her healing continued. One slow stretch, one quiet breath, one graceful moment at a time.